So in this presentation, I will discuss how to make, how to write your research paper very effectively, how to improve clarity in writing your research papers. So we often feel that there is some gap in understanding between us and our readers or reviewers. So how to close this gap? So I will discuss some of the ideas for. So before we begin, there is a disclaimer that none of these points guarantee acceptance of the paper, which is very unfortunate. I don't have a magic wand to get papers accepted, so because ultimately your idea and results matter, and these points are based on my experiences. Your experiences may be different based on your research area, your background, and also we cannot spend too much time, you know, improving just the presentation. So the context of this presentation, I would like to very clearly state, is that assuming you have great idea and great results, now how to write an effective paper. So this talk is very relevant for writing research papers, writing proposals, writing thesis, making presentations, and other forms of technical communication, which all of us are deeply involved in. So let us begin with some of the common reviewer comments or complaints. Authors fail to compare their work against this work. A huge hole. Some reviewers are very nice, some reviewers are more straightforward. So they say that a huge technical hole in the paper is that you have not verified something very basic, or you made a great figure but you forgot to include the labels on the figure. You did not provide sufficient insight as to why things work, or the key details were missing. So let us first discuss general guidelines. So we should expect a difficult reviewer who wants perfection from your paper. He will not let your paper pass through without a thorough scrutiny. At the same time, he may not have read your paper entirely. So uh, you may have clarified some point in some part of the paper, but he may not have gone through that. So you have to be ready for that. So that's why our goal should be to have maximum clarity. We should write a paper so that no one should be able to reject it. Yeah, that's a challenge. So and also the time and effort which reader spend on understanding your paper should be minimized, because if your paper is very difficult to understand, so then even if the paper itself is presenting very useful idea, most people will not be able to read it or go through it in completion. And also don't expect that the reader is on the same page as you. You have to think, how will reader perceive it, what are the challenges they may be facing in understanding your paper, and you should not leave any scope for confusion. So first thing is that you should avoid vagueness. For example, sometimes we say that this point is discussed later in the paper, which is okay, there is nothing wrong, but sometimes it is more appropriate to say where it is discussed, like in discussed in section number this. Or sometimes it is good to just say that prior work has proposed, but sometimes you can say it more effectively that which authors have proposed it. Similarly, instead of just writing number presents a technique, because this number is not part of the sentence. You should say that this authors like Raman, they presents or he presents a technique. Another thing which especially beginner researchers make common, which beginner researchers commonly make a mistake in, is that they don't clearly separate what is the idea and what is the illustrative example. For example, if you propose a technique, a software development technique, you may evaluate the technique using Java or C++, but your your technique has nothing to do with the implementation. Someone else could have demonstrated your technique through some other language, right? So that's why your technique is not dependent on the language which is used, right? So you have to make sure that you are making it clear that your technique is different and you have just shown a proof of concept in a particular language. Also, you should similarly you should also have clear separation of the what is the inference or what is the conclusion or guidance you can get from the research work, right? And these are the experiments. Experiment was your idea may be very broad and generic. Experiments cannot be that broad. You cannot possibly experiment with all the possible platforms. Or suppose you propose a technique about human behavior, you cannot evaluate the technique across the globe. You can check that technique only on a certain population section. So that's why your experiments will always be limited, but your technique may be more
broad. And similarly, you should also be careful in showing what is the difference between your research work and engineering work. So research work is mostly about novelty, how you have proposed innovative things, whereas engineering work is about getting it to implementation or doing minor changes. Those minor changes may be actually very very important, but they were not novel, right? So that is the difference, and that may involve ideas of multiple people. So that is what engineering work is. Now, you know even though one may not be very expert author, but at least one should be very careful to not make these obvious mistakes, like for example not including units on x or y axis, not referring every figure in the text, uh, or leaving some typos or undefined acronyms or missing some citations. So I particularly use Grammarly. There may be other tools which you can use. And another thing is that you should not use spoken English, you should use written English. So there is a clear difference between these two. For example, we say that in spoken English, we may say like his technique is not, his technique is bad. But in written English, we'll say that his technique is inferior or not, it lacks certain features. So written English is more sober, it is more for archival value, right? It is more gentle. So now you may say that what is so big deal, what is so big deal in making these mistakes, because I'm anyway correct in my presentation of the idea. But the point is, if an author has been careless about these points, it is very very likely that he must have made other mistakes also. So don't give any chance to the reviewers. Now, these are some of the style guides. You may not agree with this, so that's why I said it is optional. So sometimes instead of saying that results are very encouraging, you can say what are the actual results and let the reader decide whether it is encouraging or not. Because for you, 56% may be very encouraging. For me, it may not be very encouraging. You may give some name to your technique, which makes it easy to refer to the technique, so that all the time you don't have to say my technique, my technique. You can just give it a name, and then you can say that this technique has this performance. Now, avoid too many footnotes, because whenever you're having lot of footnotes, it break the flow of reading, because you are reading in a certain line, and then to see the footnote you go to the bottom of the page, and then when you come back to the original sentence, the the continuity is lost. Similarly, don't use bold text too often. You may use italics, that's somewhat better, but don't use too much bold text. Now, this is again my personal choice of using LaTeX. Nowadays, of course, Word also has many many features for scientific writing, but LaTeX has its own advantages. You can write very nice mathematical equations. You can easily generate table of contents, bibliography, cross references. Again, Word also has these features, but and you can change between style of different journals takes only minutes, right? If, for example, if you submit a paper to IEEE and the paper is rejected, and then you have to submit to ACM. So with LaTeX, it is really really fast to do this. And final layout of LaTeX is much better, and there is no version compatibility problems. And especially if you have collaborators so you may be using Microsoft Word, they may be using Linux. Now on Linux, getting support for Microsoft Word is very very difficult. So that's why LaTeX is cross platform. It is very very good from that perspective. Now we will go through each section of the paper and see what are the good elements of each section. Now in the abstract, abstract is after all just a concise, a comprehensive summary. So in this abstract, they have clearly shown that the contents of this abstract are context, goal, method, results, and conclusion. So in most abstracts, I have not seen this word specifically written, but still they include those elements to make a very comprehensive summary. So this is very complete summary. So you have to remember that many people will first read the abstract, and only if the abstract is good, they will download your paper. That means abstract has to really capture the attention of readers. It has to be very well written. At the same time, it should not be too long. Now introduction is again an extended abstract, right? It's like an appetizer. So there are some ways you can make it quite interesting. For example, this is figure is from a paper on mobile web browsing, and this is their figure number 1. So here they are showing how browser takes largest uh, amount of window focus and largest amount of CPU processing. That means browser study is very important. So this is how they are motivating their own research. Similarly here, they are showing again this is the figure number 1 of another paper, that because this nearby pixels ABCD they have some similarity, then based on this they propose some optimizations. Similarly, this is a very nice figure. So here they are showing the whole software stack. This is the applications, then languages, then browser level, and this is the hardware level. And they are also showing in which of the sections are each of these topics discussed. So from this you can see how much clarity these authors have. And definitely I will like to read such a paper. Similarly, this is another very nice figure where they have also shown in which section is each of the component discussed. This is here they are again showing the whole summary of the findings and proposed improvement, and instead of figure they are using tables. So all the findings are in section number 3 here, and all the improvements are in section number 4. Most of them are in section number 4. So from this you can see that it gives a very nice overview of the whole paper. This again figure summarizes your whole paper. Where is what are the contents of this paper. Similarly here, this is just a simple straightforward section organization, but still it is useful because this is from a survey paper, and survey papers generally tend to become long. So you can show what are all the topics discussed in this survey paper so that the reader can get the bird's eye. Again, this is a flow chart. Here if the author were to explain this technique in words, it will take at least 200 or 300 words, and still the reader may not be able to remember whatever was written. But here through this flow chart you can easily show all the steps taken for different cases, show the pluses and minuses through this use of green color or some other color. Here is another example of another very nice block diagram. So they have shown different hardware platforms like Jetson board, Keystone, Parallella, and Xilinx, and they have highlighted the similarities and differences very nicely. And through the use of color, the figure has come out really good. So in this way, you can explain your technique. Now, another very important point is you have to clearly show your own contribution. Many authors, when they're writing the introduction, they're introducing the topic and by discussing the existing work, and they're also saying whatever they are proposing themselves. And sometimes because they write in passive voice, it is not very clear what has been proposed. Right? So for example, they will say that a method for improvement of reliability has been proposed. Now, has it been proposed by this author or from the previous work? That is not very clear, right? So that's what you should be very clear. First of all, do not excessively use passive voice, especially when you are highlighting your contribution. You can take credit for what you are proposing, and you can give either paragraph titles to show that okay, this was the existing work and this is the proposed contribution. And in some field, you will say that you can that they write the contribution very clearly in bulleted points. So here are 3 bullet points, and these bullet points are like the claim which the authors are making, so that any reader can check whether these claims are really true, and based on that he can judge the paper. Now you can make your paper accessible to the layman. For that, you can try to use somewhat familiar terms so that the reader can judge that okay, in what ways does this technique affect me, or how does it affect my business. So for that, you can quote some facts from real world, and especially in the introduction, you can use you can use somewhat familiar terms. I'm not saying that you have to make the whole paper very trivial. Some important jargons have to be used, but at least in an introduction you can make it somewhat simpler. For example, here they are showing that how by saving of cache energy, the whole processor energy can be saved. Now coming to the background, here you can see that the authors have very nicely shown that over different years they have chosen the most prominent smartphone, and they have shown the parameters of each of those smartphones, right? So this summary is very thorough, and all this information is not available in a single place. They must have gone through different white papers and references and so on. So you can see that they know the trends. That means what is happening over different years and what are the parameters, right? So a thorough summary instills faith in the reader that the author knows the subject, right? So if the author can demand this kind of attention that is only possible if author can instill that faith that yes, I know the subject, I will not waste your time. Similarly, here they are summarizing the previous benchmarks before introducing their own benchmark. What are the features or what are the constituents of the previous benchmark suits, right? And what is the, you know, what is the constituent of their own proposed benchmark? Similarly, here they are showing as done in the prior works. These are all the prior works which have done this. So this kind of substantiates their claim that okay, they are not the first one to do this. Others have already done this, or this is the common practice in the research field. So here you can see that they are very nicely summarizing what the technique has to offer by showing in terms of this tick marks and the checks, and this is that okay, this is neither a good feature nor a bad feature, and this is to show that it is a desired feature. Okay, and here again they are comparing their work with the previous work, and instead of doing that comparison through text, they are doing this comparison through this table, right? And they have identified what are all the important parameters, and through that, and how does their technique compare with the previous techniques on those parameters. So here they are showing that okay, except on this parameter, on most of the other parameters their technique is quite good, right? So again, if they were to show this comparison through text, it will take them a lot of words, but use of table makes it very very clear and effective. And again, similarly, you can show this on the previous slide. I showed it through the table. Here I'm showing it through the figure. So this is another way of showing your comparative evaluation. Another thing is, whenever you're having long piece of text, it becomes very very difficult for readers to read it, especially if they're using laptop or some other gadget, because they cannot put their fingers at least, or their pen. At least when you have printed the paper, you can put a pen or a finger to show, to kind of put a mental bookmark as to where you were. But if you have a long piece of text on laptop, people will most likely lose the continuity, right? So so to avoid that, you can have paragraph title, which allows the reader to jump to the paragraph of their interest. And another thing, another benefit of this paragraph title is that if you can give a title to the paragraph, that means the paragraph discusses just one thing. But if you cannot give a title to the paragraph, maybe the paragraph is discussing too many unrelated ideas. Now you should define acronyms or math terms at one place, or you can define them whenever they are appearing first. But make sure that all the acronyms are properly defined so that there is no confusion arising out of the use of these acronyms. Okay, now coming to experimental section. So you should not just provide overall improvement, but also try to give insights so that the reader will be convinced. For example, if you were to present some data in or some technique in terms of search engine, now you say that my search engine is better than the commercial search engine, nobody will believe you. But if you can show that okay, for these reasons, or at least under these assumptions, or for these questions, my search engine is superior, they may be able to accept your claim. So similarly here they are showing this, they are proposing this Vantage technique, and they are showing that in different intervals. For Vantage, this red area is very very limited, but for wave partitioning, this red area is very very high, and for pip, this green and blue don't converge. That is the limitation of pip. So just to tell you that they are showing that how that overall improvement is achieved, so that people can be convinced and no one can question the result. Okay, another point is that simply presenting raw data is of not much use. You have to provide insights. There is already a lot of data sets which are available online. If you can get some, if you can glean some understanding, or if you can provide some insight, that is of importance. So for example, in this paper they are showing, they are making a lot of observations, and then they make a punchline. Okay, this is the finding. Then again they make a lot of observations. Again, similar idea here, they're making a lot of observations and then this insight or conclusion, and similarly they are making observation and then this conclusion. Now, to show how your technique is very good, you should perform experiments and compare your technique against the best recently proposed technique. That means the technique or the version which is state of the art. And you can also compare your technique with ideal version of the technique. For example, if you are doing something on computer vision, then obviously ideal version is not required because ideal accuracy is 100%. Now you should also compare your technique against a naive implementation. So naive implementation means something which comes first to my mind. That means something where optimization has not been done. And if your technique has two ideas, you can implement two versions of your technique to show individual advantages of each idea. And you can also show the results with different parameters, right? So I will show examples of this. And if any of this is trivial, you can skip it. So here is an example how. So these authors propose ultimately this technique, DBI plus AW plus CLB. But even before they show the results of their own technique, they are comparing with so many previous techniques. And even with their own technique, they are showing what is the contribution of just one of them or two of them or other sets of two. Right. So in this way, the experimental results are very, very thorough, and the individual contribution of each component is very clearly coming out. Here again, they are showing three versions of their technique: conservative, aggressive, and crazy. And conservative means this is at high refresh, this at low refresh, and so on. Similarly, here they are showing the contribution of each component of the technique. So their technique has two components. One is request splitting, another is network aware compression. So when the network condition is excellent, then both of them are contributing. But when the network conditions are poor, only network aware compression is contributing. So based on this, a reader can make very, very easily decisions. Here again, this is an example of showing parameter sensitive results. So here this is the default results, and then they change the parameters. There may be many parameters, for example, I, alpha, L, WS, right? And the associativity, the cache size. So each parameter they are changing and finding out the results. So if you can show the parameter sensitivity results, it shows that your technique is robust. That means it will not break down on slight change of parameters. You can choose from a range of parameters. If you choose a wrong parameter, it's not that you are going to be heavily penalized. And it also has tunable knobs. That means if someone wants more energy efficiency, they can choose that. If someone wants more performance, they can choose that. If someone wants more accuracy, they can get that also. Here is another example of showing parameter sensitivity results. Now, another very important point is that when you are showing some matrix, you should write whether lower is better or higher is better. For example, here I've taken these figures from some paper. So here they are showing that for speed up, higher is better, and for the power consumption, lower is better. Now you may say that okay, for speed up and power consumption, it is quite obvious that which is better, which is poor. But what if you were to propose alpha, beta, gamma? Nobody knows whether alpha should be high or low, right? So, but if you clearly write that for alpha, higher is better, for beta, lower is better, then readers can make very easily decisions. Now, similarly, here you can see that here they have shown that lower is better, and here they have shown higher is better. So it makes it very easy to show which techniques are better. And sometimes you can include the image of the setup just to instill kind of confidence, and also to show to read or to give them a visual idea of how the things were done. I have not seen this in many papers, but some papers I've seen this kind of images. Okay, another very so-called small but extremely important point is which mean to use. Now there are different means like arithmetic mean, harmonic mean, geometric mean, and people often make mistake in using the correct mean, right? So first thing is that geometric mean is only good for ratios. That means it is good for unitless quantities, right? Because suppose if some of the if even one of the value of geometric mean if even one of the data point is zero negative, right, then geometric mean has no significance. So from that itself you can kind of get an idea that geometric mean is good only for unitless quantities or ratios. Now let us discuss arithmetic mean and harmonic mean. So arithmetic mean is good for quantities like time, energy. So that means it must make some kind of physical sense to add those quantities, right? It makes sense to add one unit of time with another time, right? For example, you can add 5 seconds and 3 seconds to make it 8 seconds, right? Similarly, you can add energy 7 kilojoule energy you can add with 8 kilojoule energy, right? But it makes no sense to add two speeds, right? So that's why whenever you have rate based values, like for example operation per second, or meter per second, or kilometers per hour, you cannot use arithmetic mean, you have to use harmonic mean. So I will give an example on the next slide, but here you can see that uh, these two figures I have taken from the same paper, and for weighted speed up they are using geometric mean, and for the energy they are using just the normal mean. So here is an example. So suppose we drove 30 miles per hour for first 10 miles and then 90 miles per hour for next 10 miles. Then what is the average speed? Now someone may just do arithmetic mean and say that okay, the average speed is 60, but it is wrong, because you have to find out the total distance and divide it with the total time. So total distance covered was 20 miles and you divide it with the time, so actual average speed is just 45 miles per hour. So just from this simple example you may see that just a choice of wrong mean throws your conclusions totally off, right? So that's why you cannot ignore using the correct mean. You must decide which mean is correct and then use that mean. So when dealing with rates, do not use arithmetic mean, you should use harmonic mean, and people don't know how to use harmonic mean, so please be very careful. Now another thing is that you should discuss overhead of your technique. That means if someone were to adopt my technique, what is the cost he has to pay? So here this could be in terms of, if you are implementing a software, how many lines of code, or if you are implementing something in the hardware, how much additional area I have to incur. Now another thing is reproducible research earns higher trust. So you can release your code if possible, so that others can download it, they can use it, they can extend it, they can evaluate your work. And you should also tell all the parameters that you have used, right? So that, because the point is, even one of the parameters, if it is changed, it can change the results completely. That's why it is very important to use the correct parameters. Now to get higher credibility, you should do the experiments on real system, right? But if you do this experiments on simulators or artificial data sets, that will not be very credible, because simulators always have errors. Similarly, if you use, even if you have to use simulator, use open source simulators. Don't use in-house simulators, because people cannot trust the in-house simulator unless they are from very well known groups. Similarly, you should use standard benchmarks, not some fabricated benchmarks, right? Or standard data sets, not just your own versions of data sets or some other data sets. And if you are using some data set, try to use the full data set as much as possible. Of course, sometimes because of the time limitations or memory limitations, it may not be possible. But if you randomly or whimsically select certain benchmarks, then it creates a doubt. Why did they choose only those benchmarks? Why not the full benchmark suite? Finally, in the reference section, you should quote from reputed papers from top venues, right? Because they have been thoroughly peer reviewed. It doesn't mean you always quote only from those conferences, but that means you should quote those papers which can be trustworthy. And Wikipedia articles should not be used as reference. So this completes my presentation. One last point I would like to make is, what is the difference between research paper and a proposal? So generally, a paper is more technical, right? It may be it is generally written for scientific audience or technical audience, whereas proposal is also technical, but a proposal should also discuss what is the impact of the research on the society, right? Because proposal is reviewed by a committee which also sees that, because they are going to fund you, they are also seeing whether the fund is are properly used towards the betterment of the society. Also, paper presents research which is already done, whereas proposal discusses future research also and continuation of existing research. That means in proposal you are making forward-looking statements, you are making some research plan. Now, paper is generally reviewed anonymously. Right? That means irrespective of who has written the paper, they will see the paper based on the technical merit, not based on the who the author is. Whereas proposal is reviewed based on the stature of the researcher who has submitted it. So that's why there is some difference. This creates some kind of difference. They will also see what is your track record and so on. And for a proposal, you can get letter of recommendation, which you cannot get for paper, right? And so these are just some of the differences. There are obviously more differences in terms of the length and so on. So this concludes my talk. Thank you very much.